There are hidden emotional costs in every divorce, things you may not expect you're going to encounter, but you inevitably do, because divorces are expensive, they're time-consuming, they're very stressful, and as you're going through a divorce, you actually just try to push through. You just want to get through this process, and you're trying to make sure you get your discovery answered. You go to your appellate law hearing, you sit through your mediation, you sit through a deposition maybe of a couple of witnesses, then you wind up in a trial, and you've gone. And by the end of it, you are so emotionally and physically exhausted that you don't know what to do. And so many times you get to the end of it, and for a year, maybe 2 years in some counties, you've been a person who is going through a divorce, and you've started to identify as yourself as a person who's going through a divorce, not a married person, not a divorced person, the kind of this purgatory phase that you're going through right now just to get to where you're ultimately going to be. And now the divorce is over, and you don't know what to do next. Because yes, you have a decree that says you're divorced. You're a single person. You might even have your maiden name back, and you wonder, who am I now? And all of a sudden you have this kind of realization, I don't know who I am anymore. And so we have this emotional toll that your divorce is taking on you. You couldn't even predict because you didn't slow down long enough in your divorce to even process what was going on. So if you want to avoid the emotional toll the divorce is going to take on you to any extent you possibly can, you ought to be talking to somebody like a counselor or a pastor throughout your divorce, so that by the time you're through with it, you already worked through the grief of losing your marriage. Even if you're the person who files, the death of a marriage is something you're going to deal with in a grief phase, and making sure you're able to get through all those emotions, those feelings, to where the emotional toll is going to be less in the end than it would be if you just go through, you get done, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day, you're divorced, and you don't even know who you are, because that leads to depression, that leads to difficulty, interacting with your children in a different way, so you don't see them every day anymore. And then occasionally you're going to have to see this former spouse who you fought so bitterly against in court, and now you got to show up and act nice to each other at a birthday party. How are you going to do these things? These emotional costs can be very difficult if you don't take the right steps to work through them during your divorce and prepare to be that new person. I think it goes without saying that divorce affects every part of your life. Your finances, you're going from a 2-income household to a 1-income. Maybe your big house you had has been sold. Now you're living in an apartment, he's living in a rental house. Even the time you get to spend with your children, or even how you're going to take time to take the dogs out at night in the rain when you go home from work. All of these things have a daily effect on your life. And so as you're going into and through a divorce, it's really important that you take the time to think a little bit every day about, okay, these are the challenges that I have to face today. And if I'm going to get through this day, which is different than the life I used to have every day for many years, I've got to take these steps. You've got to be intentional about your thought life and your prayer life, and make sure that if I'm going to get through this time, I'm going to ask for the help that I need from the Lord and from other people who are going to help me through this time to be the person I'm supposed to be, and to make sure that no matter what I'm facing, no matter how my soon-to-be ex is treating me, no matter what the court rules against me or in my favor, that I know I'm going to come out of this divorce a better person. And you can do that if you make a decision in advance that no matter what happens, it's not going to affect the way you see yourself or the way you treat other people. Divorce affects every area of your life. Don't let it affect how you treat others. There are a lot of long-term financial impacts from your divorce. One of those may be your retirement. If you've been living with the same spouse for 25 years, you've been working for a big company that has a great retirement plan, and during that whole time you've been building up, and you expected, I'm going to retire with X amount of money. Well, now, after all these years, your spouse was a stay-at-home mom, so they didn't have any retirement they were building up, and now this retirement that was going to provide for both of you is going to get cut in half. How are you going to survive in retirement on half of what you thought you'd have? That's a consideration you got to make. Another long-term financial impact obviously can be child support. Even if your child lives with you half of the time, because of our new joint custody child support rules, you may still be paying some child support to another person, and that can affect your week-to-week finances. Other areas like who's going to pay for college, who's going to buy a car for our children when they turn 16. All these things can have financial impacts on your house, not even to consider the fact you're going to have to get a new home. Now, what you used to pay for one power bill has to pay for 2 power bills. All these things are going to have an effect on you that if you plan in advance and make steps in advance that you need to in order to get where you want to be, you'll be okay. But if you just jump into it without any plan, it's going to be much more stressful on you. So all these long-term financial effects are going to be there, but you can mitigate how hard they hit you if you take steps in advance to plan for them and to work a way that you're going to get through them in the best way that you can. Let me share with you a little lesson that I learned from a real life divorce case that I handled not too long ago in a county not too far from your county, okay? I had a family who'd been married for years. The husband had a job that was very important in the community, very well respected by everybody. He had made some really poor choices along the way. Not only when people found out about it, did it affect the way they saw him, but also certainly had a bad effect on his marriage. I represented the wife in that case, and ultimately they did divorce. She was able to get a share of his retirement. Their children were already grown, and so we didn't have to worry about custody, but there was a situation with the home. There were a lot of things that affected them, but I really appreciated that wife, all the way through that case, although he had done some really stupid, hurtful stuff to her, she never lost sight of the fact that he had still been a good dad for many years, that he had still worked hard and provided a good living for their family. And at the end of the day, although he did some things that ended their marriage, it did not end him as a person who was still an important part of her life. They still had children and grandchildren together. They still were tied together in many aspects of their life. And it wasn't long ago that I saw that he had passed away. And you know who it was that I saw posting something really positive about his death? I mean, positive in the fact that about his life after he had passed away, was his ex-wife. She had great things to say about him because she never treated him as the enemy. Even though he was the opposing party in the divorce, she knew this is something they both had to work through together to get where they were going to be in the next phase of their life. But she still kept a respect for him as a father and a grandfather and somebody who for many years had been an important and daily part of her life. So if you're going to get through your divorce and you want to be able to work out a way long-term that's going to have you as an effective parent, grandparent, and former spouse, don't treat the other side as an enemy. Let them be an opposing party if they are, but don't treat them as an enemy, because when you do, you'll never be able to see them in a positive light again. And that's something you're going to take away from yourself. Even if you think it's going to hurt the other side, you're the one who will pay in the long run. There are a lot of things that everybody knows about a divorce. It's going to take longer than you want it to. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be emotionally taxing on you. And over time, you're going to get through it. But do you really want to? But here's what you probably don't know about a divorce. You're going to make it. You'll be okay in the end because you are still a person who gets up and breathes air every morning. Your children still love you, or if they don't right now, they will again when you take steps to get them to. The truth is that what you probably don't realize about a divorce is you can be okay, because it all depends not on what somebody else does to you, not on what the court rules. It depends on the way that you take your perspective in life. If you decide, I've decided I'm going to be a kind, respectful, and respectable person before, during, and after this divorce, then you've not changed at all. Your marital status may have changed, your last name may have changed, but who you are is still the same and can even be improved if you decide through this divorce, I've decided I'm going to become a better person because I don't want this divorce to beat me. It doesn't have to unless you let it.